Hi, I am Jocelyn Harper, and when my sister Serena Caldwell handed me a clipboard, it wasn't a favor. It was a trap to force me onto a stage, playing the piano piece that broke me 12 years ago, all to sabotage my chance at an $8,500 zero-cent scholarship she coveted. She smirked, thinking I'd crumble, but I had a secret recording of her plan, and that night, I didn't just play. I exposed her betrayal to 120 witnesses. I showed up an hour early because Serena had asked me to help check the lighting. That's what she said in the family group text. It was a gala, but not for a cause. It was for Serena, Serena's foundation, Serena's board, Serena's guest list. I was here, apparently, for Serena's convenience. As soon as I walked in, one of the young assistants handed me a clipboard and a lanyard. "Volunteer badge," I said, blinking at it. "Mrs. Serena said to give this to you," she replied. It dangled off my hand. "Volunteer." I slipped it over my neck anyway. "Make sure you don't ruin my night," Serena whispered as she passed, her smile venomous. Before I could even orient myself, my mother emerged from behind the main table. "Oh, honey," she beamed. "Thank you for helping out. We were drowning here." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. I was used to being helpful, where trays of table numbers sat waiting. These go in the middle. Serena thought maybe alternate the white roses and lilies, but Walter said it was too busy, so just do what looks nice. Okay, Walter, our grandfather, even he had more weight in decisions than I did. I nodded and started placing centerpieces one by one. I passed through them like I always did, quiet, purposeful, unnoticed. Serena finally swept in around 5:30. She wore gold silk, of course. She found me near the drinks table where I'd just finished placing Jocelyn's. "You're a lifesaver," she said in that voice of hers, sugary and sharp. "Doing this at the last minute, truly. You didn't have to." I smiled like I always did. "It's fine." "Really, though?" she said. "Don't expect a thank you later. You're just the help," she added under her breath. Before I could answer, she disappeared to charm a board member. I wandered near the stage to adjust some programs. Serena had asked me to make sure they were all evenly placed. While aligning a stack, a woman standing nearby turned to me. "My daughter plays piano too. She's only 10, but she's working on Mozart already." I nodded politely. "That's wonderful. I used to play a little." But before I could finish, my mother passed behind me and chuckled. "Yes, when she was, 8? I froze. Serena was right behind her. "You mean like chopsticks, right?" I laughed too, quietly, then excused myself to refill the water pitchers. For a moment, I wasn't 30. I was 18, sitting at a black Steinway on a stage in Boston, Massachusetts. I didn't play chopsticks. I played Rachmaninoff with both hands from memory. That life, my life, had disappeared after my wrist fractured in the fall. One mistake, one silence too long. I never returned to the bench or the stage, or my voice. "You chose this silence," I whispered. "You chose to disappear, and yet here I was, arranging napkins." At 6:45, guests found their seats. My mother sat at the front with Serena's in-laws. I remained standing. That's what volunteers do. Then came the clinking of glass. Serena holding a flute of Prosecco center stage. She flashed a perfect smile. "Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're not just raising money for the foundation, we're celebrating the power of performance, and I thought, what better way to begin than with a little surprise?" My stomach turned. She looked straight at me. "Play something for us, won't you, Jocelyn?" I stood there blinking. I opened my mouth to laugh it off, maybe say something like, "Oh no, I haven't played in years," but the words didn't come out fast enough. Serena filled the space for me. "Oh, don't be modest. You were such a little prodigy, weren't you? Show them you're not washed up," she taunted, her eyes glinting. Our mother, seated at the front, added, "It'll be fun. Just one little piece. People love that kind of thing." "Fun? Sure." I tried to smile like nothing cracked under my skin. My voice finally found its way out. "I really haven't played in a long time. Serena had already turned toward the stage. A stagehand brought out a slim black folder and placed it on the grand piano's music stand. "I thought this might be perfect," Serena said. She used to play it when we were kids, back when she wanted to be somebody. I hadn't moved yet. Then I saw the sheet music list's transcription of Beethoven's Fifth. My mouth went dry. I hadn't seen that score in years. Not since Boston. Not since the night in 2008 I had locked the piano lid shut and promised myself I would never touch a key again. Then came the silence, longer than it should have been, and no one moved to help me. No one even asked. Now, here it was again, that same piece, like a trap I hadn't seen coming. Serena gestured toward the bench. "Come on, Jocelyn, don't make us beg." Walter sat still, unreadable. Marjorie tilted her head, and I walked to the piano. I sat down on the bench. Serena bent down near my shoulder before she stepped off the stage. "Try not to faint this time. Fail again, and the scholarship's mine," she hissed, her voice a blade. I didn't flinch. She didn't wait for a reply. I looked at the sheet music. If I walked away now, I'd hand them exactly what they wanted. The proof that I never belonged here to begin with. Serena's story would stand. She could have been something, but she just didn't have it. Was I really going to let her write the ending again? I looked out across the hall. They didn't know what this was. To them, it was a party trick. A woman playing a song at her sister's fancy event. No big deal. But I knew what it was. It was a dare. It was a trap, and it was a choice. I placed my fingers on the keys. Then the silence fell heavy. I played the first note, and something inside me cracked open. The first note rang out, low and full, and I didn't look up. I couldn't. If I made eye contact with anyone, Serena, Mom, the donors, I'd lose it. So I focused on the keys. My fingers found their places like they'd been waiting all these years. I hadn't meant to play it like this. I hadn't even planned to play at all. But once that first note broke the air, it was as if a little door inside me creaked open and something walked through. I didn't play it like a showpiece. I played it like I needed to breathe. I wasn't even halfway through the opening when I caught it. A voice near the front. A woman leaned toward her date and whispered, "This will be fun to watch." I didn't miss a beat. I didn't need to, because by the time I moved into the Allegro section, those same voices had gone silent. There it was again. That thread of something inside me that had been strangled years ago. It wasn't pride. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. Like coming up for air after holding your breath too long. I didn't see Serena, but I could feel her from the wings. And then Mama said she can't play, but Grandpa said she wrote this song. It came from the side. Nora's voice bouncing across. I stumbled just slightly, but recovered. Marjorie, I knew without looking, had frozen. The sound had the weight of innocence, but the impact of a grenade. I kept playing, but inside, the past cracked wide open. It wasn't Liszt, not anymore. It was a piece I'd once written during rehab when my hands would shake for hours just holding a pencil. I'd been alone, sitting and I'd pulled fragments from memory, phrases I'd never dared show anyone except Grandpa. He'd visited when he could, sat in the back. He never said much, just listened. When I showed him the melody, he nodded and said, "That's yours. Keep it close." I hadn't realized Nora had heard it too. "She wrote it to heal, not to compete," Nora added, her voice piercing the hush. Back in the ballroom, I let the melody soften. I let it speak. And now I could feel the weight of their eyes not as judgment, but something else. Recalculation, recognition, or maybe shame. I saw Elliot Warwick lean forward in his seat. His fingers tapped once on his knee, then stopped. Marjorie didn't move. She didn't blink. I reached the final measures and let them land gently. I didn't bow. I didn't look to Serena. I just let the silence do the work, because I didn't need them to clap. I just needed them quiet enough to hear it. The silence that followed my last note was not the kind that begged for applause. It was the kind that settled in people's throats and stayed there. Then, from somewhere near the back, a single pair of hands clapped. Another joined in, and then another. It spread like a ripple until I sat still on the bench. I didn't dare turn around. I kept my gaze locked on the keys. a woman across the room. A young man clapped above his head. Even Elliot Warwick had stood. But in the front row, Marjorie remained seated. "You stole my moment," Serena whispered backstage, her voice trembling with rage. "And Serena?" She stood before clicking her heels forward and taking them. "Well," she began. "Thank you, Jocelyn, for that impromptu surprise. Now, let's move on to the silent auction portion of the evening." Serena's smile tightened, but she kept her tone light. "It's been such a gift to witness unexpected talent tonight," she said. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. Every head turned. Walter. He had risen from his chair, took the microphone from Serena's. The man hadn't spoken into a mic in 15 years. Now his voice carried across the ballroom like it had been waiting for this moment all his life. "She's played half her life for silence," he said. "Let her finish her own ending for once." Serena planned to discredit her to win the scholarship, he added, his voice steady. Marjorie stood still, silent. Serena stood still, her face a mask, polite, composed, but crumbling at the edges. By the time I stepped away from the piano and slipped away, hands were still clapping. Backstage, I exhaled. I found a quiet spot near the far door. I sat down. My phone vibrated in my purse. It was Nora. "Look," she whispered. A clip. The title read, "She Played Like..." I blinked at it, sat with it, burning. No, that wasn't what I felt. I felt like I had been released. And then I looked up and saw him, Walter, standing in the hallway. He wasn't smiling. He didn't need to. He just nodded once. I didn't know it then, but that nod would break more silence than I ever could on my own. The echo of Walter's nod followed me home, not in sound, but in the way I moved. I hadn't turned on any lights when I walked into my apartment. I just dropped my shoes by the door and sat on the edge of the couch. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the gala, and from my family, nothing. Not a text, not a call, just silence. And honestly, that part didn't sting like I expected. It felt... 2 days had passed. I hadn't played again. I hadn't spoken to anyone except the barista at the coffee shop down the street, and my building's delivery guy who'd handed me a "that morning" came from out of state, he'd said. From someone named Walter. I'd smiled, muttered thanks, and brought it inside. I hadn't opened it until now. It was one of those banker boxes. Inside were folders, receipts, a dusty music stand, and toward the bottom, an envelope. Written in Walder's was one word. I opened it, expecting old recital programs or clippings. Instead, I pulled out my full name was written on the front, my old address in Augusta, Georgia. Curtis Institute of Music, Philadelphia. I stared at it before sliding a finger under the seal. Inside were 2 folded pages. The first was an official acceptance letter offering me admission to the Curtis Institute's Artist Development Program, a full scholarship, housing covered, my name printed at the top. I swallowed and reached for the second page. I sat. I hadn't known. I had never seen this before. And the date. It had been sent in March 2007, 2 months before my breakdown, before I stopped playing, before I even knew I had been nominated. It had never reached me. I looked at the envelope again. Forgotten. No, not forgotten. Hidden. "Serena hid this to ruin your future," Walter's note inside read, his handwriting firm. There had been signs. I just hadn't read them right. Serena getting... Every time the topic of music school came up, my mother brushing off mail with... The way they changed the subject when I asked if anything came for me in the mail that summer. I'd believed them because I wanted to, because I was tired. I closed my eyes and I was back there, 10 years old in 1995, sitting on a stage in a school auditorium in Athens, Georgia. But I had poured everything into it. I hit the first few bars clean, then a wrong note, a sharp where there should have been a flat, but I noticed. I looked up. Marjorie was already standing. Serena leaned into her, whispered something, and they turned. They didn't wait, they didn't smile, they didn't clap, I played to the end. I bowed, walked off. That night, I didn't touch the piano. Not for a long time, and when I finally did, I did it with It wasn't the wrong note that broke me, it was that nobody stayed. I opened my eyes again. I was back in my living room, the letter still in my lap. They hadn't just hidden the opportunity, they'd conspired to erase it. I reached for my phone and dialed Walter. It rang twice, then voicemail. I didn't try again. Instead, I sat with the weight of the truth. They wanted you broken to steal your talent, Walter's voice echoed in my mind from a past conversation. When I finally got up, I walked over to my desk. I didn't want to be their next viral thing. I didn't want to tell the story they expected. I opened a new document. I didn't type a press release or a statement. I wrote one line at the top. To whom it may concern, I will no longer be participating in the Foundation Tribute Series. Then I stared at it. I wasn't angry, not the kind that demands revenge or attention. I just wanted out. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted out of their story. 2 days after I resigned, I found myself standing at Walter's front door again. I hadn't planned to go. But there was something about that letter, about the weight of knowing what I wasn't supposed to know, that made me want to be around someone who had never lied to me. And even though Walter wasn't home, I still had his spare key. He'd insisted I keep it years ago in 2012. I let myself in, set the books I'd borrowed and let the silence settle around me. I wasn't there to snoop. I just wandered. Let my feet remember the path to the study. Let my hands trail the edge of the desk. That's when I saw it, on the old landline machine. I didn't even think it worked, and curious, I pressed play. At first, just static. Then a voice I hadn't heard through a speaker in years. Marjorie. I told Diane to throw the letter out. That kind of life makes girls arrogant. Jocelyn was delicate. It wouldn't have worked. Serena deserves the scholarship more, she added, her tone icy. That was it. No greeting, no sign-off, just a single thought, a judgment, and a sentence that had shaped the last 12 years of my life. I stood there. They hadn't just hidden the opportunity, they'd conspired to erase it. I didn't cry, not right away. I just listened again, hit rewind, played it once more. Then I grabbed my phone. I deleted it from the machine. Marjorie didn't know it was gone. But now I had it. I sent it to Elliot with a note. This is who they are. Later that afternoon, I sat parked outside the HOA Community Center in Charleston, South Carolina. The meeting was already underway. Serena's quarterly beautification fund update open to donors and the neighborhood board. I'd brought copies. I walked in quietly. The kind of calm that comes after rage has run its course. Serena stood at the front, smiling as she gestured toward a projector slide. When she saw me, Jocelyn, she said, "Didn't expect you today." "I'm here as a citizen," I said, "and as someone whose name has been used without permission." "Excuse me?" she asked. I turned to the group. "I'd like a moment to address the board." Someone gestured for me to go ahead. I passed out. The packets. I didn't even know the performances had been scheduled. I looked up. I never agreed to any of this. My name, my work, my likeness, all used without my consent. Serena forged my signature on the $45,000 0-cents grant, I revealed, holding up proof. Then someone from the council spoke. "Serena, did your sister sign off on these details?" Serena stammered. It was understood. I didn't say a word I didn't need to. One of them was Elliot Warwick. After the meeting, I waited outside. I knew she'd follow, and she did. "What the hell are you doing?" she hissed. I turned to her, protecting what's mine. She stepped closer. "You think this will fix anything? You think humiliating me will make you feel better?" "You'll regret this, Jocelyn," she spat, her voice low. "No," I said, "but it will make sure you never use me again." She stared. "But nothing came. Not this time." I leaned in slightly. "You used to speak like you owned every room. That day is over." and I turned to go. That was the last time she spoke to me. 2 days after the HOA meeting, I learned what my sister was truly capable of when cornered. It was a Thursday morning in October 2020. I had just finished folding laundry when I noticed my phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. Then I saw the tags, my name, the word unstable, the gala clip reposted now with a... I opened one of the videos. It started with me on stage, then narration over. She was known for violent mood swings. She once screamed at a student for misplaying a scale. Several conservatory staff recall her leaving mid-performance in a daze. I watched the whole thing. The video was posted by a page called Music Ed Truths. I didn't need to guess who was behind it. I sat down at the edge of my bed that afternoon. Elliot Warwick emailed. Sponsors went quiet. Journalists pinged my inbox. My family, nothing. Marjorie posted a photo. Serena wrote, "She didn't need to say my name. She knew I'd feel the blade anyway." I didn't answer any messages. I didn't post. I didn't try to clear things up. I just unplugged the modem, and that evening there was a knock. I checked the peephole and saw. I opened the door. She stepped in. We sat on the rug, and I wrapped her in a... She didn't say anything at first. Then she handed me a... "I wasn't supposed to let you have this," she whispered. I didn't push. I just pressed play. Serena's voice came through first. "Okay, Nora, again, if someone asks, what do you say?" I say Jocelyn yells at people, that she gets really mad and she scares the students louder. She scares the students. Nora's tiny voice broke through again. "But I don't want to say that, Mom. It's not true. Mira, this is for her own good. We're protecting people." Nora looked up at me. She said it was just for practice, but she sent it to her friend after. I held her hand gently, then pulled her into a hug. "You did the right thing," I whispered. I didn't get angry. I didn't storm out to the world with the recording. Instead, I stood up. I attached a formal statement. I would no longer participate in the foundation. I would not pursue the community grant, but I would protect my name. I sent the recording to the scholarship board exposing Serena's lies. After Nora left, I sat at my desk. I opened the drawer, took out the lacquered hairpin my grandmother gave me when I turned 9 in 1996. I hadn't touched it in years. I placed it on the table beside the "I didn't cry. I didn't sleep. I wrote not a post, not a rebuttal, something new, a proposal, a concept, a concert. My voice on my terms." I titled it Unsilenced, a performance to reclaim my truth. The moment I stepped into the auditorium lobby, I knew something was off. It wasn't the decor, though. Everything screamed Serena. No, it wasn't the surface that rattled me. It was the silence. Not the quiet kind that feels reverent, but the kind that vibrates. I kept my coat on, sat near the back. Serena hadn't seen me yet. I watched her glide across the stage. "Tonight," she announced, "is not about me." Well, not entirely. Marjorie clapped with both hands. Behind Serena, Serena Porter, the visionary behind the sound. I didn't blink. After the success of our foundation's latest outreach and the viral moment that reminded us all of music's power, I am proud to present a tribute concert to the woman who made it all possible. My name was never spoken, but the moment she lifted her arm toward the screen, the room knew, and I stood. I didn't walk fast. I didn't stumble. I just moved through the aisle. I stepped onto the stage. Serena faltered. She turned toward me. I didn't wait for permission. I nodded to the pianist, then reached for the microphone. Serena's fingers tightened, but she let go. "Good evening," I said. My voice didn't shake. "Before any tribute begins, I'd like to share the reason I returned to music in the first place." Elliot Warwick leaned forward in his chair. I sat at the piano, not the one from the gala, a larger Steinway. I didn't touch the keys right away. "I wrote this piece," I said, "not for a stage, not for an audience. I wrote it when I didn't think I'd play again." Then I began. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, but it breathed. My fingers didn't hesitate. They just remembered, and I let the silence hang. Then I reached into my pocket. pulled out my phone. I want to thank someone else, I said quietly, not for their kindness, but for their clarity. I tapped play. Serena's voice crackled through the auditorium speakers. Okay, Nora, again. If someone asks, what do you say? I say Jocelyn yells at people. Louder. But I don't want to say that, Mom. It's not true. Marjorie's hand shot up. Nora, seated near the aisle. I let it finish. Then I played the final passage of my piece, and then stillness. I stood, then Elliot rose. He clapped, others followed. But I didn't wait for the ovation to swell. I left the stage and headed for the lobby. I breathed it in. Elliot caught up to me at the curb. You just burned the whole building down with grace, he said. The scholarship is yours, he added, his voice firm. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Serena didn't come after me. Marjorie, I stood there, my bag over my shoulder. For once, they didn't just hear me. They listened. 1 year later, on a quiet Saturday morning in March 2021, I unlocked the side door of the Community Conservatory in Savannah, Georgia, and stepped into the... I slipped the key back into my coat pocket, then... A few kids were already waiting outside. I waved back. A year ago, I walked off a stage for what I thought might be the last time. I hadn't planned to teach, but when the Savannah Conservatory asked if I'd be open to serving as artist in residence, I agreed. On one condition: no auditions, no referrals from prestigious programs, just children who wanted to play, especially the ones turned away by people like my sister. Now every Saturday, I sat on this same piano bench teaching kids who were, and not once did I tell them to aim for perfect. That morning, Nora arrived last. She walked in quietly. She didn't say much, and I never asked for more than she offered. We had enough, huh? Her presence was enough. She was 8 now, but when her fingers touched the keys, something bloomed. We never spoke about Serena. She never brought her up, and I never forced a conversation she hadn't chosen. But every Saturday before she left, she hugged me, and that said more than I ever needed. After the last student left, and I stayed behind to tidy up, my hand brushed the lid of the piano. Then I reached into my bag. It lay inside, the same one I wore the night Serena handed me a clipboard instead of a chair at the gala. I hadn't touched it in years. I placed it on top of the piano. I looked at it before whispering, I don't need to be small to be safe. There hadn't been a word from Marjorie or Serena in over 6 months. No calls, no apologies, and for the first time in my life, that silence didn't sting. It felt... One envelope had arrived a few weeks earlier from Elliot. Just a short note. Thank you for showing us the real sound of integrity. The board unanimously voted to name the youth scholarship after Walter. We hope you'll present it next spring. I smiled when I read it. Walter would have been proud. He would have, and sat in the front row all the same, clapping. I could still hear his voice sometimes. Play the truth, Jocelyn. Just play the truth. That afternoon, just before I turned off the lights, a small boy named Isaac stayed behind. He'd only started lessons a month ago, and he still struggled with left-hand rhythms. He stared at the keys, then pressed. He turned to me. Instead, I smiled. That's the start of something, I said gently. Let's keep going. He grinned, then turned back to the keys, and I sat beside him. Yet as I watched Isaac play, I knew Serena's lies still lingered, a shadow I'd carry, but one I'd never let define me again.